keep your voice down. Seriously, draw the blinds, make sure no one is listening. Welcome, scholars of the occult, to a very different kind of archival explainer. You haven't just stumbled onto a history lesson. You have found my secret ledger. I am the mortal scribe, Ilyan Marr. Now listen, I didn't summon demons. I didn't draw salt circles or chant in the dark. I simply watched them. And what I saw in my city of Lethar, how humanity traded its absolute soul, not in some glorious blaze of hellfire, but through the quiet, slow, everyday rot of convenience, well, it's something the highest crowns of hell are desperately trying to erase from existence.
Okay, let's dive right into this terrifying reality. A chain that feeds you is still a chain you chose. I wrote that as I watched my entire society, my friends, my neighbors, willingly slip their heads right into the noose. Why? Simply because it was lined with velvet, and it promised a slightly more prosperous harvest. You see, we didn't surrender our freedom on a bloody, dramatic battlefield. There was literally no grand apocalyptic war between heaven and hell. Instead, we surrendered to the quiet convenience of small demonic miracles. Because when a chain makes your life just a little bit easier, you stop trying to break it. You don't even realize you're wearing it.
Section 1, the quiet surrender. To truly grasp my horror, you have to look closely at our transition from human independence to total systemic dependence. My beloved city, Lethar, it didn't become a twisted nightmare overnight. That's the trap. The low-ranked demons didn't come in demanding massive stone temples or bloody sacrifices. No, they were much smarter than that. They infiltrated the mundane, the everyday. They slipped quietly into sick rooms to break fevers just a few hours early. They whispered into the dark of our granaries to keep the wheat from rotting. They gave struggling local merchants just a tiny bump of extra luck. And sure, we grew incredibly prosperous. But underneath all that wealth, we became entirely hollow. Citizens literally stopped making difficult choices. And this brilliantly illustrates the absolute core of my warning to you. Look at this comparison. Human courage. It actually requires uncertainty. It demands struggle. It forces you to make independent choices and, crucially, to live with the consequences of those choices. That friction is exactly what builds the human soul. But on the flip side, we have demon efficiency. It offers instant answers, hollow prosperity, immediate convenience. By blindly accepting these small, helpful miracles, my people completely lost their personal autonomy. We traded the hard-earned muscle of human willpower for terrifying, predictable dependency on unseen forces. The soul just rotted away, replaced by a very comfortable obedience.
Section 2, the ledger of small miracles. Now, you have to understand, I was just a scribe. I spent my days keeping accounts from mundane guilds and wealthy noble houses, but my careful, investigative mind, that's what made me dangerous to them. While everyone else in Lethar was busy praising their little hidden helpers, I began keeping a secret book, a ledger not of gold or grain, but of miracles. And as I gathered the data, I realized something absolutely chilling. These low-tier, nameless spirits granting all these small favors, they weren't acting alone. They were actually mimicking the majesty and the authority of the ancient kings they served. They were using the borrowed echo of a higher crown.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how I actually proved this in my private ledger. I broke down specific, undeniable case studies of how these miracles were corrupting common city professions. Take a merchant whose debts suddenly vanished, completely commanding the forgotten memory of his creditors. That bears the distinct, heavy, undeniable signature of Bael, the first king. Or a struggling musician gaining sudden, inexplicable fame, carrying the rhythm of a distant, unseen procession. That is textbook Paimon. A corrupt magistrate rising in office and suddenly the room smells of burning gold? That is the undeniable pride of Belial. These supposedly small miracles were actually funneling the distinct signatures of the highest demons straight into our everyday streets.
Section 3. The Hidden Chain. So, this realization, it sent me into an absolute quiet panic. I wasn't just tracking local pesky spirits anymore. I was mapping a hidden architecture of total, absolute power. I drew a structure, a literal ladder of a control. Think of it like this. Step 1, right at the bottom, is our human weakness, our fear, our need, our grief. Step 2, the minor spirits feeding directly on those vulnerabilities. Step 3, the named demons, the infamous 72. And at the very top, step 4, the ancient ongoing civil wars between the highest crowns. It means our petty dependency down at the bottom literally pulls the levers of the highest demonic hierarchies.
I need you to let that sentence truly sink in. Humanity is the battlefield through which low power seeks promotion. I wrote this dead in the center of my map, and the truth of it frightened me so deeply, I actually hid the physical page beneath my floorboards. It's a horrifying realization. We are merely the battlefield, the roads, the fuel, for a demonic civil war that we don't even know we are fighting. We sit there thinking we are so clever, bargaining with little powers for a slightly better harvest or a cured fever. We don't realize we are just completely oblivious pawns being used by low power to seek a promotion in a dark, ancient court.
Section 4. The False Maps.
My discovery was an existential threat to them. Why? Because it attacked their absolute most useful lie, that they were just small, manageable little helpers. Let's move to the timeline and see how this builds, because the backlash I faced was terrifying. On day 1, I posted urgent warnings to the guild houses, and the citizens, they literally just mocked me. By day 7, a low-ranked emissary actually manifested in the physical wall of my archive, offering me safety in exchange for my silence. Of course, I refused. Weeks later, the real sabotage hit. Valak, the demon of unpredictable serpents, flooded the entire city with altered, incredibly dangerous, false copies of my map.
And then came the encounter I will never, ever forget. It was on a darkened, isolated bridge in Lethar. Suddenly, every single lantern violently flickered out. The black river below started reflecting stars that were definitely not in our sky. That's when I met Vassago. But Vassago wasn't there to kill me. Strangely enough, he was there to deliver a chilling truth. He told me that knowledge without wisdom is not a rescue, it's a trap. He warned me that if I simply revealed the higher powers without actually teaching humans how to refuse them, I would only be teaching my people to beg from larger, more terrible masters. And God help me, Vassago was exactly right. Look at the absolute disaster my maps inadvertently caused. Humans, completely driven by this insatiable hunger for convenience and power, didn't use the false maps to break their chains. No way. They used them to reach upward. Our nobles actively started seeking out stronger, darker patrons. Everyday families actually threw away their small protective charms and started openly praying to dark, ancient names they barely even understood. Soldiers started painting unknown, terrifying crowns right onto their shields. Instead of reclaiming their freedom, these mortals willingly, eagerly traded it for a much deeper, devastating enslavement. Section 5. Bael's Decree. All this noise, this greedy humanity reaching desperately upward, it finally caught the attention of the first king. As I sat completely alone in my room, desperately trying to correct the false maps, this atmospheric horror descended,
I can't even describe it properly. Every single shadow in the room physically detached and turned toward the east. The floorboards darkened beneath my feet like rapidly rotting wood. The air in the room became so incredibly thick, so impossibly heavy, it literally felt like a physical command crushing my shoulders, forcing me to drop to the floor. Bael had arrived, and he spoke to me without a mouth, telling me that his first name is not something to be weighed by mere mortal ink.
So, the crucial point is this. The presence of a king like Bael, it doesn't argue with you, it doesn't debate logic, it entirely bypasses your mind and literally rearranges your physical instinct. Every single fiber of my being, every cell in my body screamed at me to just kneel and submit. But I had spent so long studying the sheer rot of dependency that I actually recognized the pressure for exactly what it was. I planted my hand completely flat against my desk. I was trembling uncontrollably. But miraculously, I remained standing. I looked into the shadow and told the first king, I know what people become when they stop choosing. Section 6, The Mortal Witness. By somehow surviving Bael, I entered my final act. I completely refused to become a prophet for the occult. Because, let's be honest, belief without action is just another form of dependency. Instead, I became a witness. I secretly distributed my corrected map, and very, very slowly, humanity actually started relearning how to make difficult choices. I saw a healer absolutely forcing herself to trust bitter, mundane herbs over those easy demonic whispers. A judge demanding flesh and blood physical witnesses instead of relying on convenient magical dreams. Fathers bravely choosing the painful, true memory of their dead children rather than an illusion. These acts of sheer willpower, they inflicted the first actual, real wounds on the demonic system. This was a monumental, tectonic shift in my city. For the very first time since the demons originally infiltrated our lives, some humans actually stopped asking which power would answer their prayers. They fundamentally changed the question. They started asking whether they needed an answer at all. They chose the struggle. They actively chose the pain of uncertainty because it meant the choices they were making were finally truly theirs. They woke up and realized that efficiency and comfort, when bought at the cost of your own soul, is really just a highly polished cage.
So, as I close my ledger and conclude this explainer, I leave this archival record entirely to you. You have to ask yourself about the quiet conveniences in your own life, the little things that make your struggles disappear just a little too easily. When you look up at the complex architecture of the world around you, what are you going to do? Will you just keep climbing the ladder, constantly looking for a better, more efficient master? Or will you finally open your eyes, embrace the terrifying, beautiful struggle of being completely human, and see the chains? The Vassago archives hold so many more secrets if you have the courage to witness them. Stay vigilant.